Greetings, people. My name is Ira, and this is Leaving the United States Part 3, and I'm going to be talking about house hunting in this section. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and if you think it's appropriate, share it with a friend. Let's get to it. I'm going to break this up in about 3 sections. The first section will be whether or not you really should house hunt, whether to rent or buy. The second section will be on how to begin the process of house hunting, and the third will be what happens while you're house hunting. So beginning with whether or not you should buy or rent, a lot of the expat publications suggest very strongly that you should rent before you buy. Rent for 6 months and learn if you like the region, like France at all, like the region, like the kind of house that you're living in, like the place where you're living in, and that way you won't make a long-term mistake on a short-term idea. We had decided that we were going to live in France, and we had a pretty good idea where we were going to live when we lived in France by the time that it came to buy a house. Now, we'd already done some house hunting, and that was a part of our learning whether or not we wanted to live in this region, and that is that the first time we came, before we ever got here, we had made arrangements to meet with real estate agents. But you have to decide, after you've done that, if you've done that, you have to decide whether or not, well, you like the place enough to look for a house, or you like the place enough to investigate further and therefore rent a house on a long-term basis. We had decided that we'd done our due diligence, that this is where we're going to stay, and I just realized that I have my headphones in, my earbuds in, and they felt funny for a minute. It's an amateur thing, folks. So we had decided that we were going to go ahead and buy. You may decide something different, and that's fine. And there are places to rent, and you can use them as a foothold to find out more about the region and to find out whether or not the region fits you. And we had already decided that, so we decided to house hunt. And what we decided to do in that case was to meet with as many real estate agents as possible in as short amount as possible. So we went on the internet and we searched all sorts of different terms. Real estate Languedoc, real estate Narbonne, real estate Béziers, real estate Capistaing, real estate Caron, real estate here, real estate there. And we found some of the bigger sites like real estate Languedoc, sites like Green Acres, real estate agents like Freddie Ruda, R-U-E-D-A. Freddie sold us our first house, then sold that first house for us, and then showed us the second house. And yes, indeed, I did lose the earbud, but since I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to you, I'll put the earbud away. Okay, so there are sites that you can go to that are either large sites or that aggregate information from other sites. There's also a site called Le Bon Coin, the Good Corner, LEBONCOIN.fr, and Le Bon Coin is sort of the French Craigslist, and it has a real estate section, and even a small town like Caron, which only has 1,500 people in it, has something like 35 or 40 listings. So a lot of the people who also list with real estate agents list on Le Bon Coin, because without a multi-list, and to my knowledge, France still does not have a multi-list. Without a multi-list, you're dealing with individual agents. When we sold our first house, we had it listed with 3 different agents, and that wasn't a problem for any of them. Because there's no multi-list, you have to be exposed as well as you possibly can expose yourself, and that sounds strange. And so we decided to list with multi real estate agents, and we managed to sell with one of the big ones, Freddie Ruda. So you have a lot of tools that you can use, but you don't have the multi-list tools. You don't have Zillow. So you've got to do a lot of internet investigation, and you have to kind of know what you're doing through research before you get involved, because you're not going to have the same protections that you have in the United States. So we made appointments with real estate agents, and we had a list. And you need to know what you need when you get to France in a house. Inside space, outside space. How many bedrooms? How many bathrooms? Is an eat-in kitchen enough, or do you need a separate dining room? Is a terrace enough, or do you need ground and grass space? All of that stuff you need to know, because what's going to happen when you get to France, even if you've made appointments with real estate agents. And even if you told them what those requirements are, and even if you've sent them the listing numbers of specific listings, real estate agents are going to show you what they have to sell, and they're not necessarily going to show you exactly what are compatible with your requirements. We had a lot of real estate agents say to us after we came to meet them that that listing that we'd sent them has already been sold. We had a lot of real estate agents that took us to places that we were not interested in, and we had to tell them that we were not going to waste our time, and that bars were very nice and plentiful in France, and we could always sit in a bar and wait to talk to the next real estate agent if they weren't going to show us houses that were in our price range, in the towns that we wanted to be in the condition that we wanted them to be in. So you have to be that firm and that careful, and you have to do your due diligence, and then you will get your rendezvous with real estate agents, and then you will start seeing houses. And I think it's very important that you do take the time to see as many houses as you can see. As I said, we would make rendezvous with real estate agents before we got to France during our vacations, and we would make those rendezvous, those appointments, one in the morning and then lunch, and then one in the afternoon, and then one in the morning and then lunch, and then one in the afternoon. So in a week, we could see, or in a Monday through Friday week, we could see 10 real estate agents. We'd leave the second week free to either find new stuff or to work with what we'd already been shown. And so in 2 weeks, we had a pretty good idea of whether or not we had seen anything we were going to buy, and we'd seen enough so that if we saw any more, it would give us a sticker shock. We wouldn't be able to really make value judgments. So the first time we came to buy a house, we saw many real estate agents. We didn't know all of this. We didn't know about Le Bon Coin, for instance. We didn't know how real estate agents were likely to act with us. And so we didn't see a lot that was really suitable. What we did find in that first visit to France was that we picked the right place. So then we got a little bit more careful with our real estate agents. We got a little bit more insistent that houses that were showing on their website were houses that we actually could see if we came. And that second time went much more smoothly. Now, both times we've bought our houses, the last house we saw was the house we bought. Now I know that's, oh yeah, right, of course, the last thing you find what you want to find the last place you look. But in this case, both of them were kind of interesting because in both cases, we were shown houses that came on the market because the financing had fallen through. Now that sounds cute, and it sounds like it might be a sales tactic, but the fact of the matter is that happens here in France, particularly if an expat's buying or selling houses, because the problems then become financing. It's kind of difficult to finance a house in France if you're an American and you don't have a bank account, you don't have a business, you don't have a salary coming through the French system. And I'll talk a little bit more about mortgages probably in the next set, but for right now, understand that houses do fall through, deals fall through based on the ability of the buyer to finance houses, and that has not just happened in our case, that houses came on the market for us, but we also know people who were trying to sell houses who had people sign agreements of sale based on the ability to get a mortgage, and then found that they couldn't, that the person that they'd signed with couldn't get a mortgage. So it's more than likely that the real estate agent was telling us the truth, that the houses that we found were houses that had already been sold, but for whom the financing had fallen through. So it's very simple. Decide that you want to buy a house. Decide that it is appropriate for you. It was appropriate for us to buy a house. The books suggest that it might be appropriate for most people to rent long term, 6 months or so. Once you've done that, you have to do your due diligence on the internet. The big websites like Real Estate Long Doc, if you're talking about Long Doc, this goes for any region. You search real estate sites, Real Estate Long Doc, and you search the main towns in that region. For Languedoc and the area that we were interested in, we were searching for real estate Narbonne, real estate Béziers, real estate Capistang, and all of the big towns in the area, so that we had amassed many bookmarks of real estate sites that we could visit. We evaluated those book sites based on those websites, those bookmarked websites, picked a pack of pickled peppers, uh, the book site websites, the bookmarked websites, uh, and slowly winnowed through them. Every real estate agency got in the bookmarks. A lot of them then started to get winnowed out. The bigger ones and the ones that showed turnover and the ones that showed most of the types of houses that we were looking for. So we winnowed it down to a few. We found resources, particularly later in the process, like Le Bon Coin, that isn't a real estate site but is a Craigslist type site. I've been talking for 10 minutes and my mouth isn't working real well, and I apologize. So you find all these sites, you bookmark all these sites, you go through them, you make you send emails to the agencies, you let them know your requirements, you make your rendezvous, you go visit the houses, you compare them to your requirements, and then you make the offer for the house. And the offer for the house should be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10% below the asking price. It may be the asking price itself. If you may end up with the asking price itself. You may learn either through your own research or through talking with your real estate agent that there's a possibility that a greater discount might be available, but don't count on it, and then make your offer. And I'll talk about what happens again when you make your offer, whether or not it's accepted. Well, if it's accepted. If it's not accepted, then you move on. If it is accepted, then there's some things you'll have to do. And I'll talk about them in the next segment. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Remember, if you have, please like it and subscribe to the channel and share it. And let me know in the comment section whether there are other things you'd like to know or whether I'm just all screwed up and don't know what I'm talking about. I'd be glad to hear from you. Thanks. Have a good one.